In the second part of our hair animation, we're going to animate our character's hair as she looks back and forth. Let's start with the hair front. Let's move to frame 32 on the timeline, press the keyframe button. Now let's move over to frame 36. We'll type in -2. Turn off the hair back layer so we can see better. We'll move over to frame 42. Press the keyframe button. Move over to frame 46. Type in a value of 2. Now let's move over to frame 64. Press the keyframe button. Now we'll move to frame 69 and change our rotation value back to 0. Let's head into our graph editor, zoom in, and again we'll drag our handles to the left. And we'll do that same thing for the next one. And again for the third animation. So now let's do the same thing for the hair back. For this one, we want our hair back to be going in the opposite direction. We'll turn our layer back on. Move to frame 32. Press the keyframe button. Move to frame 36. Change our rotation value to 4. Now let's move to frame 42. Press the keyframe button. Head to frame 46. Enter a value of -4. Move to frame 64. Press the keyframe button. And now we can move to frame 69 and put a value of 0. Head into the graph editor. Again, we're going to drag these handles to the left for all 3 of them. So now that our main hair animation is finished, there's just one more thing I would like to do, and it's animate the position on the hair front. Let's select our hair front layer, hold Shift and press P to bring up the position. Let's go to frame 52, press the stopwatch to put a keyframe. Then we can move to frame 56, and let's type in a value of 41 into the Y position. Move to frame 64. Press the keyframe button. And finally, we'll move to frame 69, and we'll copy and paste our first keyframe. So now the hair moves down as she looks down. Select our keyframes, press F9 to easy ease. And for this animation, I think I'll just leave it at the default easing. Now let's add some final touches. First thing we'll do is create a new background. We'll go to Layer, New, Solid. I'm going to choose a blue color for the background. Move it to the bottom of our layers. We'll rename it. Press Enter to rename a layer. Now let's create a new composition. I'm going to name it Main. You can copy my settings: width of 1920, height of 1080, frame rate of 30, duration 600 frames. In our new composition, we can create a background. I'm going to choose a light blue color. Again, we'll rename it Background. Now let's create a circle to put our character in. We'll use our ellipse tool. Hold Shift to create a perfect circle. Let's rename the layer Matte. Center our anchor point using the anchor point tool. Now let's align our circle to the center of the composition. Now let's drop our character into the composition. Obviously our character is a little too big, so let's bring up the scale with the S key. Scale it down to 50%. Put it under our matte layer. And let's use the track matte pick whip. I think our character is still a little bit too big, so we'll bring up the scale again. Scale it down to 45. There, that's a little better. Now let's add some texture. I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. I'm going to rename it Boil. I'm going to add a turbulent displace effect. Change the amount down to 16. The size down to 6. We can change our complexity to 2. We're going to add some animation. Hold the Alt key and click on the random seed stopwatch. In this field we can type in our expression. Random 10,000. There we go. To make it better, we're going to duplicate our turbulent displace effect. We're going to change some of these settings. We can change the amount to 30 and the size down to 2. We can also change our complexity. Change it to 4. There we go. This will give our animation a little bit more of a hand-drawn look. Another thing we can do is add a little bit of paper texture. I'll put a link on the project and resources page to a website where you can download free paper textures. I'm going to drop in my paper into the composition. And I'm going to change the mode to multiply. Now we have a nice paper texture overlay. One more thing I'll do is create a border. I'm going to create a new solid, layer, new solid. Use the color picker, we'll make it the same color as our circle. Now I'm going to create a mask over our new solid layer by choosing the rounded rectangle tool. We'll double click on the rounded rectangle tool and that'll add a mask to our solid layer. We'll toggle down the mask and we'll go to Mask Path, Shape, and here we can change these values. Change the left to 55, top to 55, right to subtract 55, and bottom to subtract 55. We'll change the mask's mode to subtract. There we go. This lesson is for anybody that wants to animate the circle. First thing we'll do is select our matte layer, press Ctrl D to duplicate. With our new Matte 2 layer selected, we'll go to the Fill option, get our eyedropper tool. We'll make it the same color as our circle. Now let's turn our layer on so it's not invisible anymore. We'll rename our layer to Circle. Remember to press Enter to rename a layer. Now we'll select our character layer and our matte layer and we'll move them down the timeline just to get them out of the way for now. We'll go back to our circle layer, press S to bring up the scale. At the beginning of the timeline we're going to set our scale to 0, press the stopwatch to put a keyframe. We'll move over 12 frames on the timeline. Set our scale to 125 so our circle gets big. Move over to frame 20 on the timeline. Set our scale to 90 so our circle gets small. Move over to frame 26. Set our scale to 105 so our circle gets bigger again. And finally we'll move to frame 28 and we'll set our scale to 100, the final resting place. Select our keyframes, press F9 to easy ease, head into the graph editor. Make sure we're on the speed graph. The first two handles, we'll drag them all the way to the left. For the rest of the handles, we'll drag them into the middle. Head back to our timeline. We'll go to our last circle keyframe. With our layer selected, hold Alt and bracket to trim our layer on the timeline. And we'll move our matte and character layer down the timeline just as our circle layer ends. And there we go.